Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for joining us, Your Excellencies, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Hanako Montgomery. I'm an international correspondent with CNN, and today I'll be moderating a panel about global trade in a new era. Right before our eyes, the world order is shifting. Friendships are fraying. New spheres of influence are emerging, and trade rules, as we've known them, are changing in real time. In this new landscape, trade will never be the same, and I think arguably none of our countries, our people, will be the same. So in the face of this uncertainty, how can countries weather the storm? How can they make sure they're prioritizing their national interests with international cooperation? Fortunately, we have a great group of panelists here with us today who can help us answer some of these questions head on and make sense of these looming questions. Originally, we had one other panelist here, Laurent Saint-Martin, the Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade and French nationals abroad. I am told he is arriving late, about 15 minutes before our panel ends. So, you're still in good hands. We have 4 other panelists. And I would like to introduce each of them from now. To my immediate left is Mr. Bertrand Badre, Managing Partner of Blue Orange Sustainable Capital and former Managing Director of the World Bank Group. Next to Mr. Badre is Lars Hendrik Roller, Chairman of Berlin Global Dialogue. And joining us from Almaty is Mr. Timur Turlov, CEO and founder of Freedom Holding. And I'm also pleased to introduce Mr. Daniel Rundy, Senior Vice President at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, gentlemen, if you can each begin with a brief opening statement to get us started with our session, and then I'd like to move on to questions. Let's begin with you.
Thank you, Hanako, and I'm, of course, extremely pleased to be here today. It's quite extraordinary. I was born and raised in France in the last century, and I would have never imagined that I would discuss trade as a weapon. Never, ever. I mean, one of my dissertations was about the creation of WTO. Then, of course, this was followed by the admission of Russia, China, or Vietnam, for example. It was always moving in the same direction. Free trade, free trade, free trade. And then things started to unfold in the 2010s and then 2020s, obviously. I saw that when I was at the World Bank. And for me, it's fascinating to see how these reversals is happening. I think what we see is not just trade as a weapon. It's a change, it's a bigger shift in the way we operate in the world. We all feel it. It's pretty difficult to characterize. We feel overwhelmed by everything which is going on. I mean, trade is a number of issues. I mean, you name it, tariffs, and it's quite ironical that we discussed today at the time when the US court made the decision that Trump's tariffs were illegal. That's not quite unnoticed today. But it's also export ban, it's a number of barriers, etc. But for me, it goes, and that's, I'll stop with that, it goes a little beyond that just trade. I think we are moving from a world, sorry to be a little pedantic, where basically Ricardo, the guy that makes the theory of free trade and the comparative advantages, was the king, was the master. It was about, free trade was leading the growth. You could not develop your country without entering into free trade, etc. So we were in a world where Ricardo was the name of the game, and we're moving into a world where Hobbes is the name of the game. Hobbes meaning everybody against everybody. Everybody is a wolf for the others. It's us versus they. And that's a big shift. And there are many reasons for that. We all know that. Geopolitical reasons, political reasons, economic reasons. We can rationalize all of this, but the truth is that we have shifted. And it's extremely difficult to imagine what comes next. So for me, trade as a weapon is just a signal, a symptom of something which is way bigger and which is also one of the topics of this forum. And I think we have plenty of time to discuss.
Yes, lots to get into.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hanako.
Mr. Roller?
The microphone is a little bit on the left, so I hope you can hear me. So I can follow up on that. I was also very much involved in the multilateral order, and it was interesting to hear the opening statements of the leaders, current leaders and past leaders. and what to do about it. I was Angela Merkel's economic advisor for 10 years, did the G7 and the G20, so we were all about multilateralism, and of course Germany benefited a lot from that, I think Europe in general. And now everything's changing. Right now, actually, there's a lot of chaos, and there's chaos about chaos. And a little bit what I'd like to discuss in this panel is where are we going and what we should be doing. And I close on that, you can try to preserve is a little bit what the discussion was this morning, also with middle powers and small countries who are, by the way, the losers of, or could potentially be the losers if the big guys get together, and Europe is clearly a big guy. So one is try to preserve multilateralism, including, reforming the international institutions, the UN, the WTO, etc., which is not going to be easy because it means really shifting powers in many ways. Or you can go towards a world of spheres of influence, which people are talking about, and I think we're moving, and it's interesting for Europe. Should Europe go with the United States or should we go with China? All that discussions. This is a European discussion we're having, and Europe is also, at a very important point of its phase. And I think that's dangerous if we get into spheres of influence, which we've been doing. By the way, all of those trends are not new. This has been happening already with the BRICS and other things like that. And I think there we should think about how do we work together if it is spheres of confidence. And the last one is all this bilateral stuff, which the United States is proposing with its current president, who I worked with under Trump 1 for many years. And of course, bilateral agreements we've done already in the past. And the problem, of course, with bilateral agreements, it's great for those two guys who are negotiating, but what about all the other ones who are not at the table? And that's why we were always very fond of the WTO, which is sort of becoming more and more irrelevant. But I think there will be bilateralism, but I think we should be very careful that the big guys are not dividing up the world amongst themselves bilaterally, because as your president was saying, or your president was saying this morning, and others were saying, we have global problems. Nobody alone can solve that. This is what we were trying to do in the last 20 years since World War II, by the way, with the help of the United States, mostly. And I think there's bilateralism and this transactionalism and this short run and hitting your friends in the face and then trying to make a deal. I don't think solves the global problems which we have at this point. But where the world is going, nobody really knows at this point.
Great, thank you. Mr. Terlov?
Thank you. I think the key value for most countries in the world is to keep their independence. And I think to be independent, you have to be not dependent much on someone. So you have to be not necessarily self-sufficient, but at least have a lot of multilateral relationship. So you have to depend on many different sides, which you can arbitrage and keep this balance. And I think in our country we know that very, very well. And that's what we see, what I see in our politics in general. So to be fully self-sufficient in this kind of the world, I think is not efficient at all. So world is getting even more and more and more integrated because of digitalization. And global products actually present on global markets. So we use a lot of products and services which is leading globally. Like Google leads almost everywhere in the world and have a huge market share in search. Like AI providers also started to lead and keep very, very, very big market share. I really believe that the economic growth and prosperity for any society depends very much on efficiency of our economy. And usually open economy is more efficient than the closed economy. It's definitely good to be very open. I think the only bad stuff to be when this open economics is being dependent on single player or something like that. And that's a risk of that's a risk of being dependent to your trade partner. And disruption of free trade, actually, in my opinion, can create some problems which finally may lead to less independence and more concentration in trade. Because of if we will lose at least some of our trade partners, so we'll be more dependent of the rest. But on the other hand, the current world is very efficient itself. Even if you can make a tariff on one country, so it will be a lot of players who will find a solution how to transfer these goods to different countries and then re-export. World is very digital. World is very efficient. World is pretty well connected. It's much, much different than it was, 80 years ago, like we were discussed on the first panel. So we live in a new world. This world can speak, and with the rise of AI, information and education never were such accessible like it is. So we can exchange information now much, much better, and we can build a relationship much more efficient and keep this relationship. So our integration is growing everywhere. So we buying goods and services globally and selling them globally. I really believe that, and we as a fintech, we also understand that to be competitive at home, we need to be competitive globally. And we can't build a strategy for isolation. We still need to follow integrations, and that's still the only stuff for which can bring a prosperity.
Thank you. Mr. Ranji?
So one of the things I think about trade as a weapon is that trade as a weapon often works, maybe at least works in the short to medium term. So in Central Asia, many in the audience will know of something called the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. Can I just see, who knows what the Jackson-Vanik Amendment is in this room? Anybody knows? Okay. No one in Washington knows what it is. Even though everyone in Central Asia knows what it is, almost nobody in DC knows what it is. It was set up in 1974, and it was an amendment to a trade act to put pressure on the Soviet Union to allow for the free emigration of Jews and other religious dissidents. And it worked. It was linking trade to human rights. And many people were able to leave the Soviet Union for the United States and Israel as a result of Jackson-Vanik. That's the good news. The bad news is the Soviet Union ended a long time ago, more than 35 years ago, and Russia, which was sort of the inheritor of a lot of the Soviet Union stuff, got released from Jackson-Vanik, but a number of Central Asian countries have been kind of trapped in this time warp of being on the Jackson-Vanik bad list or naughty list, and every year they have to get a waiver, and so it worked, but now it doesn't work anymore, and now it's hard to kind of undo it. So that's an example of as trade as a weapon that's local that I think many of you can relate to. And one of the most important things the US could do if it wanted to have a better relationship with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan is fix that. And our political process, you would think you'd be able to fix it, and so far we haven't been able to fix it. The second example of trade as a weapon is how Russia has used energy as a weapon in Europe. Nord Stream or Ukraine or other countries where they've used gas as a weapon. And so many people would say, okay, well, over time you can maybe say, oh, I'm going to find an alternate source of gas. I'll go get it from Qatar. I'll get it from Algeria. But that takes a long time. So trade as a weapon in the short run to the medium run works, but there's all sorts of other consequences associated with it.
Thank you very much. Now, just to get the ball rolling and get this conversation started, Mr. Badre, in one word, how would you describe the state of global trade? Would you say grim, chaotic, dire?
I think it's chaotic. I mean, definitely. Again, for many years, it was easy to see the GDP growth and say GDP growth in the global economy is 4 to 6%, 20 years ago, and trade is 6 to 10%. And trade is really the locomotive of growth. And that was very predictable. I mean, you moved year in, year out, same. And today, it's very, very difficult to make any connection. And of course, notwithstanding the headlines changing every day, etc., when you're, I'm an investor, some people here are also in the business, how do you plan in this world? Because it's not just trade, it's also tax, it's also migrations, visas, etc. Everything is becoming more unpredictable. And so, unfortunately, I mean, 20 years ago, people start to popularize the acronym VUCA, you know, for volatile, uncertain, etc. It was a little early. Now we are exactly in that things, chaotic, and it's difficult to make sense of all of this, and it's creating tensions everywhere. I mean, consumers, investors, businessmen, everybody is uncertain, and of course it creates a totally suboptimal outcome at every level. Precisely as my colleague said earlier, at a time where we need to have a global reaction to address the global challenges, I think it was said this morning, and precisely at the moment where we need to basically transform, I would say, globalization into something I would call planetarization to address all the challenges, climate number one, we are doing exactly the opposite. So that adds to the stress and the chaos.
Great, thank you. I mean, indeed it is. And especially also, we discussed this just a few minutes earlier, but the US President Trump's tariffs, right, and the recent New York court ruling, and just the chaos that could potentially lead from that as well.
I mean, just when you see this court ruling, it comes after several weeks of application of the tariff. So people have already started to pay billions of dollars of tariffs. Then the court steps in. Nobody knows exactly. I mean, the US government is appealing that decision. It will go to the Supreme Court. What do you do in the meantime? Do you keep your container carrier at bay and say, let's wait until it's solved or not? It is impossible to address, technically. So the US is a kind of epitomizing this chaos, but it goes beyond. I mean, some other countries are playing that game. That's what I say. It's a bigger trend where everybody is trying to flex its muscle. We argue it's sovereignty, it's safety, it's tax results. I mean, we have all plenty of reasons to move in that direction. In a way, we move in a world where we have the feeling that we are in a finite world. In a finite world, let's grab the max I can for me. That's as simple as that. And that's terrible because there are big cycles. We had this, I mean, at the beginning of the 20th century, and we saw the results. After that, we kind of reopened the door. And now we are back to a moment where, you know, you want to grab, including in the space, actually. Under the sea, in the space, everywhere. And trade is part of this arsenal of new weapons.
Indeed. And on that point, Mr. Roller, I saw you were raising your hand, so I think you have a lot of comments and thoughts. But economists were warning the US President Donald Trump about the potential implications of his tariff policies, his tariff war, if you would say, before his Liberation Day. Given the way that things are playing out right now, did you think it was going to be this bad?
No, but...
Oh, your mic.
I think that... Sorry. No, but I think that I think that I don't get the economic strategy of the United States, but it's none of my business. I'm a European. But there are two theories in the United States. Sort of one is, you know, tariffs don't really solve any problems, inflation and blah blah blah. The other one is it's a part of a grand strategy. And it takes a little bit of pain and chaos. And then the United States is going to be great because everybody's going to relocate to the United States. Manufacturing is going to be part of that.
Almost a necessary evil.
I come from a country where manufacturing is very important, but actually I think that's a wrong strategy. I think 75% of the US economy is services. So there is this, so then people say, let's give him 6 months and he's going to get better deals from everybody. So the other argument is not only relocating, and under Trump 1, he did that actually smartly with a tax plan, which he did. And the other one is he's going to get better deals. And whether he's going to get better deals, I don't know. I hope the Europeans are going to look for a balanced deal, and not only that because we are screwing for 40 years that country, that we owe them anything. And as a German, of course, I know very well that, you know, we owe a lot to the United States, including the security part of it. So there are these two theories in the United States, and let's see. I don't think it's going to work. On the more general trade point, I think that trade and weapon, whatever or pressure, I think that's not new. I think we've used trade and market power to get things done in the world for many, many years. The question is only, what's your goal? Do you actually use your trade power or your market power to destroy the multilateral trading system or the multilateral system as a whole? Or do you do it actually to promote trade? I mean, what we've done in the past, also examples from the United States, they've used their power to open up markets, to break protectionist regimes. But they're now sort of doing it in the other way, and I think this is wrong. And on top of it, you get reactions from other countries. National security is becoming more important. Protectionism is, in one way or the other, it's a big word, is also becoming more important. And the rest of the world is actually following suit, because we're all going down that route into a world where we're all in it for ourselves. It's the big ones doing trades with the big ones. And this whole engine of economic growth, which has produced a lot of inequality, by the way. It's not true that globalization has benefited everybody. I think that's a big problem of globalization, that we're going to lose all of that. So there's nothing wrong with using trade as, call it a weapon or as pressure. The question is, what are you using this power for? And I think we're using it for the wrong thing at this point.
You mentioned that globalization doesn't benefit everyone, which I'm sure some of our panelists have thoughts about that as well. But what do you think these issues of trade really reveal about the vulnerabilities in our current geoeconomic system?
Sorry, say that again?
What do you think the current state of our geoeconomic system, what do you think the vulnerabilities that we're seeing exposed due to this trade war, this tariff war, what do you think that's exposing?
Well, I think it makes it much worse. I think it's not only the chaos. So there's a short-run problem with all that chaos, which we don't really know what's going to happen, as you were saying. And the other one is a structural shift. And I think there's using, being national security is more. Actually, the tariffs are all justified, Section 232, the ones which are still legal at this point, actually, under national security grounds. And actually, Europe is also going in that direction. We have a big debate in Europe where we need to protect ourselves. And my answer to all of that would be, look, I mean, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I don't think we've lost everything already, but there's a transformation of multilateralism. And if we go more towards bilateral deals, because the multilateral system cannot be saved, and I think we should try to save it as much as possible, let's network all of us. Let's not all have a bilateral deal with the United States only, but let's intensify our trade and our relationships amongst ourselves. And that includes middle powers and small. So I think Europe is actually doing that. Maros Sefcovic, who's the trade commissioner, is doing all the negotiations. He's doing trade negotiations with many countries around the world. So let's have sort of a network of bilaterals, at least that, if we lose some ground on the multilateralism.
Thank you. And Mr. Terlov, as a businessman in Kazakhstan, actually the richest man in Kazakhstan now, as of 2 weeks ago, I'm sure this tariff war... Yes, as of 2 weeks ago. I'm sure this tariff war is affecting many businesses like yours. How are you dealing with this uncertainty? How are you preparing for what's to come?
I think the key problem of all these trade wars is disrupting of trust and disrupting of confidence, which of course not yet disrupted because it's been built over a very long period of time. So, and I think the United States, European Union spent a lot of time to create a reputation of predictable partner with stable rules and regulations, and so nobody can expect that you can ship something to the United States, and when this ship will arrive, you will have to pay like 100% tax on that, which you will never know when you just send your ship there, and and maybe we see in the market reactions. The stock market is going up and down. And try to react to this new style of global policy. buying and then selling, setting record on growth and setting record on losing some value, it's quite unusual. In my opinion, the trust and confidence is a great treasure of developed countries. So that's why they are such rich in the end of the day. Because most of developed countries now is not most efficient economics anymore. But they still in economics with the most predictable regimes, with the highest political stability, with the highest stability and of rule of law, and with a great investor confidence, internal and external, business confidence. And in my opinion, it's very crucial to keep this confidence, to keep this confidence in international relationship, and not to create, not to let your counterparts know that now you're definitely not predictable. So that you have to ensure your risk of tariffs, you have to think and add some margin because you never know how your trip will be finished when you will finally arrive. So that's, I think, a very unusual stuff, because when we hear that the tariffs will be doubled, then it will be eliminated. So now market is still have a confidence, and they still believe in that. But if we will abuse that confidence long enough, it will be very difficult to restore that confidence afterwards. And in my opinion, we see that a lot of Asian countries now, they have a much younger population. They have much more tech optimistic people at the end of the day. And that's a big driver of productivity in these countries. And I believe that digitalization can benefit these early adopters maybe faster than original developers of this technology. Because yes, the United States and Europe still a developer of a lot of technologies, but not the first implementator of that, which is bad for them. But I believe that this strong institutional environment, this strong institutional ecosystem of predictability and confidence is still creates such a lot of value that even some minor lack of efficiency in technology doesn't matter so much. But if this process will not be restored, and if we will not still get back to some predictability and some less hostile way of shocking people, to I think in the end of the day we can that will help for a lot of already developed and rich countries to continue go forward, because I'm still sure that the of course, it's a very huge demand in different societies. It's a huge demand in American society to change stuff, and for some hard negotiation with the rest of the world. But I really believe that the American leader will be wise enough to know the limit of these hard negotiations.
Well,
and
we'll see.
We will get to predictability.
Right. Thank you. And Mr. Rundy, kind of tangentially related, but in Kazakhstan, as you mentioned, we have Jackson Vanik and the unique implications of that. I'm wondering, I mean, with this tariff war, is this sort of a double storm? Is this the perfect storm for Kazakhstan?
Well, I went out and bought a car on March 31st before Liberation Day. So I voted for Donald Trump, but I also, and I don't regret it, but I would also say that there is this issue of predictability that's come up in this conversation. I would say that for Kazakhstan, let me just say a couple of things about why this is happening in the United States. I mean, I think he got a popular vote majority, an electoral college majority. He has a 53% approval rating right now, and more than 50% of the American electorate believes that they're going in the right direction. It's the first time in like 20 or 25 years. He was elected on migration. He was elected on fighting political correctness. He was elected on inflation. Trade was not one of the issues. I believe the American voter and the people that voted for Donald Trump are willing to give him a pass on what may be described as some of the unpredictability that may result as a result of these tariffs because of these other issues. And if I think about how Trump is using these tariffs, he's using them in the case of Mexico to say, I want you to deal with migration, I want you to deal with Chinese economic activity using USMCA as a backdoor, and third, I want you to deal with fentanyl. And in the case of China, he is saying, if you don't help us deal with our fentanyl problem, because his electorate, which is rural voters, are being killed in the tens of thousands every year by the fentanyl epidemic. If you don't deal with that, we're going to put 100%, 200%, 300% tariffs. And many Americans, up until now at least, have been willing to say they're willing to accept that. And so I would just say that so that's what's driving a lot of this. He remains popular. And now let's see where we are in 6 months. If the price of toys is too high, or I can't buy a Mercedes-Benz at a reasonable price, let's see how the American electorate feels then. But I do think up until now he has been given a pass by his voters and by the American people. And he remains a popular president. So having said all that, as it relates to Kazakhstan, I think that Kazakhstan has this Jackson Vanik issue, which I think grates on Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's a great development success story. And Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and others are like, why do we have this issue that's an anachronism? This has been described as an anachronism. And they're correct. Kazakhstan was also, we can have a conversation, try and convince them. We're not going to convince them to look at the world any other way than they currently look at the world. So I think it is a challenge for Kazakhstan. I also think we haven't talked about Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and what that means for Kazakhstan and what that potentially also means. So that's shifted all sorts of trade routes and impacted Central Asia as well. The northern corridor that goes through Russia is become a trickier thing. People have rethought whether they want to buy Russian gas. The European Union has said they're going to stop buying, they're going to get off the Russian gas, cocaine, if you will, the drug of Russian gas. They've also said that, and you also look at things like, there's like more interest in things like the middle corridor. You also saying things like, so I think there are some risks and opportunities for Kazakhstan. There's some risks and opportunities for Central Asia. Let me just say one other thing and I'll stop. There's a third example of trade as a weapon. When COVID happened, China threatened the United States and said, we're going to stop selling you pills, your pharmaceuticals, and we're going to stop selling you ventilators. Those were grounds for an economic divorce. So we've been in the process of getting an economic divorce from China. All sorts of words have sprung up since then. Nearshoring, friendshoring, allied shoring, you've all heard these terms, right? That's a result of what happened in COVID. So Kazakhstan could be and should be a nearshore, allied shore, alternative shore to China. As Timur was saying, there's an interest in diversification of sources. Kazakhstan has the opportunity to be a metals processor. I don't want to be dependent on China for metals processing. You guys do a lot of mining. You guys don't do a lot of metals processing. You guys would be a great boon to the world if you could figure out how to process more metals, because I don't want to buy processed metals from China anymore for a whole bunch of reasons, national security reasons or otherwise. Once they said they were going to cut off the pills and ventilators, then it was time to have a divorce. But if they invade Taiwan or they threaten to invade Taiwan, we haven't figured this out. We've spent about 10 or 15 years kind of as the West trying to sort out this issue of metals. We haven't figured this out. We're about 10 years behind where we need to be. Kazakhstan could be a big solution. You guys have the ability to be a solution to this challenge that's in the West. I'll stop there.
Mr. Roller, it looked like you wanted to say something a bit earlier.
No, actually, I think I wanted to say one thing about the trust issue. I think that's important. And I know there's this discussion about hard power and soft power in the world, and I think we all have our nationalistic galleries to play for, also in Germany, by the way. If this German government doesn't perform, we're going to have a problem, where the voters are going to vote for, parties which tell them, you are being taken advantage by foreigners. Similar issue as in many other countries. So we don't want that. And I think building trust, I think, is very important. And I think building trust is also, so yeah, my boss for 10 years Angela Merkel in Europe, very often we were the strongest economy in Europe. We basically did something, this might come as a surprise, which was not to our advantage, because we thought we're going to get it back many, many times later on. So if you're very strong, it's actually very important sometimes if you have sort of global issues to solve that. Sometimes you don't extort the maximum. You actually give, it's also in personal life. That's how you build trust. You're building long-run relationships. I know this is difficult. It's very difficult, and there's lots of, Putin was obviously somebody which, started a war, and Angela Merkel tried to prevent that. Obviously, it didn't work. So there's no trust at all. And I think that, but I think building that trust also, I think there's also in the leaders' statements, it sounds a bit like spaced out, but I think it's a very important issue, and it's not, you don't just look only for your personal interest. You also give something. And I think that's, I think that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, I think this is important to keep that in mind, that we built this. And if you look at behavior by big and strong countries, and they basically just look after their own interest, very narrowly defined, that might even sell with the voters for a certain while. I don't think it is something which gets us there in the long run. Anyways, yeah.
And Mr. Badger, I know you want to say something, and we definitely want to hear from you. I do also want to ask, though, to you specifically, given the fact that we've kind of referenced this throughout the conversation. I mean, Kazakhstan is seeing Russia's invasion of Ukraine on its doorstep, right? That invasion, that conflict is one of the biggest issues we've seen in the 21st century. I'm wondering, can you explore the ways in which economic warfare has changed because of that war? And of course, the comments you wanted to say.
Well, first, I think we are being taken, I would say, hostage of a shift of the narrative, the global narrative. I refer to my early years as a student, and at that time we promoted the idea that it was a win-win strategy. Everybody was benefiting. My neighbor rightly said that it was win-win-lose for certain, but still we had this vision of win-win. And suddenly we are moving to a narrative where it's a zero-sum game. That if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. It's as simple as that. And who is the decision maker on that? More and more the government or the very big conglomerates and companies. And that is destroying trust. So that's really the shift we are seeing today. And of course, as I said earlier, one of this movement that we are seeing is that we are in a world which is under pressure, a world which is finite. And so in this finite world, I want to grab the maximum I can. The conflict with Ukraine is part of this. What's going on in the space is also part of this. What's going on under the sea is part of this. And it comes with consequences. I mean, in a way where if you think that it's a zero-sum game, it's a finite world, you want to flex your muscle and you want to get as much as you can. And of course it has consequences. And of course the conflict in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, was a wake-up call for many. I mean, including not only in Germany, but in Europe and in many countries in the world. We realized that, after COVID, that we had built a very sophisticated, very fragile, but very sophisticated system. I mean, all the supply chain, etc. We didn't know about this. But the first time you realize that in a smartphone you have like 2,000 suppliers coming from 150 countries, etc. It's super complex. And suddenly you realize that it's okay on an Excel spreadsheet, but in real life the Excel spreadsheet might not be that great. And then you cannot rescue Excel with PowerPoint. That's the point. And that's where we are today. We realize that we have to adjust. Let me take an example, and I close with that. But it's exactly the same as Ukraine. You build things, you build your business plan, you build your growth on the fact that things will continue as they are before the chaos. So for instance, you say UK is joining the EU. And then good news, we built a tunnel under the channel. So that's very great. So you build a part of the automobile industry based on that. So you have a lot of pieces which move back and forth under the channel with the train, and you develop a car industry in the UK. Your Excel spreadsheet say it can grow forever. And suddenly, you have the Brexit. What do we do? You have the same story with China. You had the same story with Russian gas, etc. We had built a whole system on interdependence and globalization. And today, it's breaking up in a number of places. And then it gives, of course, a big role with the government. You discuss about friend showing, but who is making the decision on who is your friend or who is not your friend? It's not me. I have friends in certain countries, but my government say no, etc. So we are really shifting the paradigm. And that's what is pretty stressful. And coming to your point, Timur, this has an impact on trust. I mean, the heart of the economy is trust. Now, who can you trust? Who is deciding who you can trust? At what price? For how long? Because things can turn around. So I think we're living a pretty intense moment. So I think it was great that you choose to address this topic up front. Because this is a massive topic. It's not just trade, it's the whole system, as I say. How do you handle migrations? How do you handle tax? How do you handle all of your economic policy? Are we moving into, again, really in a zero-sum game for all? Or are we capable of rescuing what's left of the win-win strategy we've developed over the past few years?
Great, thank you.
Just wanted, so I think the zero-sum game is, of course, exactly what it is. So suppose we go into a world of zero-sum thinking. Suppose we go, and we are going that way. Europe is going to have to spend, it's actually also good for Europe. Europe is going to have to spend much more on defense. We're going to buy European weapons. We're not going to buy American weapons, even though right now we don't have them, actually. So, so it's going to go, you know, into this very much fragmented world where national security, we don't want to work with China anymore. I'm against that. I think we should continue working with China, by the way. There's a big debate in Europe, in my country, but I'm not in the government anymore precisely because we don't want that. We do need to work with others, even if they're not democratic, but not be stupid and defend our interests. But if we go, we are going to all go into our things. The big guys are going to, you know, work with themselves. The small ones are going to suffer. National security, and what is the consequence? We can do that. I think Europe may actually do well, actually, because we're a rich continent. You know? If we can agree. The problem in Europe is we can't agree on anything, or at least it's been very difficult in the past because there's not one country. We go into that direction, I don't think the world is going to be a better place. It's going to be lower growth, it's not good for development, it's not good for climate, it's not good for global health. It may be good for some very rich people in certain countries, but it's the wrong way to go. And that's why I think we should resist that. And we should, if we can keep up the multilateral system, let's at least have lots of relationships around the world, including between Europe and I know there's a strategic agreement which was signed, I think, in April between Europe and Central Asia. Let's work together and let's not have zero sum. Let's try look for win-win situations, because I don't think in the end this is going to be the good world I want to live in. Sorry, very emotional statement. But,
Mr. Rundy, I saw you shaking your head when you mentioned doing business with China.
Yeah.
Is that a no-go?
Look, the term Cold War hasn't been used in this conference yet, but I think a lot of people in Washington, certainly the working phrase is great power competition, but I think among many people in the Republican Party, I don't necessarily think President Trump thinks this way, but there are a lot of people in the Republican Party on the Capitol Hill and elsewhere who think we're in a second Cold War. And so as a result, I think that how we look at trade is going to be impacted by this. I think that the fact that we've set up a committee on the Chinese Communist Party in the U.S. Congress, I think reflects this concern about China. And I think China, Russia, Iran, in my view, and I think in many people's view in Washington, is that we're going to have a much cold. Let's put it this way: we're going to have a much colder relationship, and I think that's how a lot of things are going to be looked at in Washington is through that lens. And I think we're kidding ourselves if we don't accept that reality.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Terlov, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, and I think, it's also in this discussion we definitely have to mention how individuals are affected, right, due to this economic warfare. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, you have received some criticism in the media about your company and yourself potentially benefiting from the war in Ukraine. And how do you, stay afloat amid all of that?
It's, I think we live in an extremely unpredictable world. and disposal of our big Russian assets late 22nd definitely were not in not our key benefit of that stuff. So we spent a lot of time, a lot of money. We invested a lot to Russian market, and then we sold this company with some discount to equity capital, even despite all that investment to technology. And we also realized that our key knowledge is how to build the bridges, how to connect markets, how to connect nationals, how to connect the stock markets. And we simply realized that it will be extremely difficult to connect Russian market with the rest of the world. And that's why we actually decided to dispose our Russian assets and go out and be concentrated on Central Asia, to be concentrated on Europe. We definitely not the beneficiary of that, because we lost our key asset that time with hundreds of thousands customers relationship, which is even more important. I think the role of Central Asian economy is grown because of that. Now we only investment great country in Central Asia, in all this region. We only country with open capital account. But that's a good example of how we can be, that's not a zero-sum game. Our sum unfortunately become less. And even if we took some market share, which we never had before because of competition with Russia, but the total market shrinked a lot as a result of this war, and confidence also were disrupted. So in this case, maybe I'm much more lucky than many of my competitors in Russia or anywhere else, but how all this environment, all this war, this consequences of that war is a big cost for all our economics and also for our company, because now we should invest hundreds of people to investigate every payment, to investigate every contract, to onboard customers in much more complicated procedures. So even if you have a very efficient digital business, rules and regulation can make that not such efficient as before. We don't have other options. So frankly speaking, I'm happy that I have a chance still to do my job, still to connect markets, still to create fintech, still to develop international relations in insurance, in e-commerce, in many other stuffs. But but at the end of the day, Kazakhstan, the cost of doing business with internationals for Kazakhstan became higher. It's not restricted. I think our president do a great diplomacy, and we still have a lot of friends. But the cost of doing business is higher for everyone, for anyway, because everybody understands that we have a big neighbor, and everybody have to pay a lot of attention to any player who touch Russia at this moment, and we should prove that we're not guilty absolutely every time, for reason and for not. That's also part of the game, and everything which does not kill us makes us stronger, as you remember. And that's a good example, because last 3 years we met so much problems and crises, from real problems and crises till some very strange and which some strange allegations which completely false, which is also some part of this game. But what doesn't kill you make it stronger, and I know that people in Kazakhstan finally became much stronger in the last 3 years in their international relationship, in their system and controls
Mr.
to
Cherlov.
survive and to grow.
I'm so sorry to cut you off because I realize we're running out of time soon. But I did want to just follow up with that. It sounds like you've had to, of course, adapt your business and change, and you've mentioned digitalization. But clearly, of course, there are winners and losers as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Have you benefited from the Russian invasion of Ukraine business-wise?
That's where my answer actually. We lost a lot. Yes, we secured our position now because we are almost only firm who provides the services. But the growth of our compliance cost, in my opinion, if that never happened, we were much richer than we are. So it still was a losing game for us for a lot of reasons. Yes, at this moment, we definitely took some market share which belonged to Russia before. But we lost much more in the end of the day because of many, many different reasons. And no, in my opinion, that's very crazy situation. I'm not the beneficiary of that for completely no reason. Because I think nobody, rather than financial sector, suffered more from this disruption of payments, disruption of rising compliance costs and all of that stuff.
Great, thank you. And again, we are nearing time, but the Minister Delegate has just joined us. Thank you very much. So I did want to ask each of you, the panelists, just to kind of give us a very, very brief, because again, we are reaching near the time, of just how countries, how economies can prepare themselves if all that really lies ahead is uncertainty. Again, if you could just summarize in less than a minute, I would really appreciate it. Maybe we can start with you, Mr. Badre.
I think we have to play short-term and long-term. So short-term, fortunately, the rules of the game have shifted and we have to abide by these new rules. It's extremely unfortunate. I mean, as just been said, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but globally we lose. And long-term, and I think it's important, I'm speaking next to my minister, I'm speaking in Kazakhstan, I think we all have a particular responsibility in kind of imagining what comes next. We just cannot look and say, okay, my God, you know, it's like the guy jumping from the tower and they say at every floor, so far, so good. No, we have to find a parachute and find a new system.
Thank you. Mr. Roller?
Yeah, I think we need to rebalance globalization, not getting rid of multilateralism, preserving it, but rebalancing it. And what I mean by that is reducing dependencies. I think, you know, the example on Russian energy, that was obviously a big thing. We're also very dependent on the United States with defense. I think we need to, as the US president has been asking for many years, we should be more independent. So I think we should never be dependent too much on anybody. This includes anybody, also friends, I think, because you never know what happens. But at the same time, you should diversify and build more relationships around the world. This is part of actually reducing your dependence, is having options. And that's why I think we should have trade deals with India, with Asia, Latin America, and including, I think, also a relationship with China.
Thank you. Mr. Cherlov?
I'm sure that even despite all these problems, that's a great chance for Kazakhstan to not just survive here, but to become a really political hub and economical hub for not just for Central Asia, but also to be a trustworthy partner for many different countries, for the United States, for Europe, for Asia, and to be a market who will try to benefit building this relationship and facilitating this relationship in benefits of our neighbors, in benefits of our citizens in the end of the day, because we unfortunately not such rich country, and we also don't have much pleasure to be inefficient. So we have to be focused on our internal efficiency and make sure that we will not hurt our efficiency breaking some relationship with any of our partners and with any of our counterparts. Because only economic growth and our multilateralism is, I think, a key reason to and a key guarantee for our independence as a country and for our further growth.
Thank you.
So
Mr.
it's
Mundy.
certainly unpredictable. I said earlier I bought a car. I bought a German car. I'm really happy with it. But I think the system was imperfect, and I think from Trump's perspective that this required some sort of major disruption. And my hope is that there will be some adjustments that will help us return to something akin to a win-win situation in the medium term. May not be in the next 2 to 3 years, but in the medium term, we might return to something like that. I do think there are opportunities for Kazakhstan and Central Asia in this very complex environment. One is you get along with everybody. Two, your location, it's really hard to get here from the United States, but you're centrally located in Central Asia, right? So you got, location is a plus and a minus, make it a plus. And then I'd say, I think there are some areas, I think no one's going to want to depend on China or Russia or even, other countries as well for anything. And so you all have a lot of potential. I use the example of metals processing. If you can move out, if you could solve the world's problem and be the alternate to China on metals processing and move it along the middle corridor, that would be an amazing contribution to the world for Kazakhstan and the rest of Central Asia, maybe using Turkmenistan gas. That's not an original thought. Someone else said that to me the other day. So that's my hope.
Thank you. We're all waiting for that direct flight from DC to Astana.
Yeah, no direct flights from, that's the other thing, sorry. My other deep thought, we did a big study 10 years ago. How do we deepen U.S.-Kazakhstan ties? My deepest thought, direct flights.
It would solve a lot of headaches, yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Minister. Just to briefly introduce you, you are the Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade and French Nationals Abroad, Minister Laurent Saint-Martin. I believe you have a closing remark for us prepared, is that correct?
Thank you very much for having me. I'll be brief because I see that you already turned the light off.
We started around 5 minutes late, so I'm saying we have 5 minutes extra.
We'll be very brief. Now, I think in a nutshell, first of all, last thing you said is really true. About direct flight, we are joking about that, but it's really important, actually. And what you said about DC, I could do the same about Paris. As soon as you have a direct flight, you completely change the relationship in terms of people, tourism, of course, but also about trade and investment. It's everything can start from a direct flight sometime. Getting back to our debate, you use the word weapon for the title of your panel. I think we have to analyze which kind of weapon are we talking about and what can be the consequences of these weapons. I don't really follow the ones who are saying that the world is changing, that we are changing the system, that it's completely falling apart. I don't really think so. I think rules are changing. And consequences are real, directly and indirectly. That's for sure. I do believe that every strength, every country, every private corporate, every key people and sector have to adapt. That's for sure. But I don't really see a new world closing. I think we are still in the same world, but the rules are changing, and the most powerful ones are changing the rules. And to be honest, I think we used to live during the last decades in a kind of special level playing field momentum, or trying to be, that we are living now, but it is where we were way before. So this is a kind of jungle rule that is coming back, and everyone has to adapt. So I'm talking, of course, from a French perspective and to some extent from a European perspective. I think if you're talking about weapon as trade, of course, the first direct consequence is how deep and how important do we destroy value with this new trade war and what's happening when we're talking about tariff, etc. From Europe perspective, it's huge. It's huge. So when I say we have to adapt, of course, we have to avoid this negative agenda that will make Europe destroy value, having less export. And from the US perspective, for example, we do believe that the consequences sometimes can be even better than for Europe and for other parts of the world in terms of inflation and in terms of recession it can create. So this weapon, if trade is a weapon, has many different consequences. And direct ones are different depending on who are the targets. That's the first point. Second point, indirect consequences. And I think this is the most dangerous and the most difficult to anticipate. Because roads, when you're talking about trade, are changing very rapidly. Of course, I'm talking here about a lot of counterparts from all the country. We don't agree on everything, but there is one common point, is that we have to diversify partnerships. Everybody is talking about diversifying partnership, and it's fully normal. Because when there is an earthquake, of course, you have to adapt and you have to see new partners and you have to look for new ways of trading, investments, etc. And of course, GDP growth country, GDP growth areas are, of course, for everyone, part of the world where everyone wants to create new partnership and to cooperate more. But the indirect effect, and maybe the most dangerous one when we are talking about trade as a weapon, is what can be rerouted that some countries and some continents don't want. Talking about overcapacities, for example, when you are getting your industry back, as we are doing in Europe, and of course there are the overcapacities from China coming to Europe, for example, we have to protect Europe, and this is new, even if it has started before. We have to accelerate protecting Europe, even if this is not our first positive agenda, if I can say so. So indirect consequences are maybe at least as important, if not most important, than the direct consequences of this weapon, which is trade. And of course, the third part is how you make yourself stronger during these very specific times. And I heard Bertrand Badré talking about the fact that history has never linearity in it, and you are building things that are breaking and you have to adapt all the time. Multilateralism is one of them. Level playing field is one of them. So, of course, you have to think about yourself and how you make yourself stronger. And for Europe, I think this is a real wake-up call. How can we change Europe as a genuine economic and investment strength when we are negotiating, when we are creating cooperation with other parts of the world? Europe has made a great achievement this last decade, which is internal peace. Europe has made great achievement in terms of unique market, about regulation, sometimes a bit too much. But Europe now has an agenda that belongs to itself, which is how to become a genuine strength, being able to negotiate, being able to retaliate if needed. I say if needed because this won't ever be our own agenda facing US or other part of the world. We want 0 for 0. This is our agenda.
Minister, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I think we did get the signal from the lights.
Yeah.
It is about time to wrap up.
This will be my last word. You have to be able to retaliate, otherwise you're not a strength. And you have to diversify and to find new friends and new partners. This is maybe the new shape of the world, I would say, but this is not a new world.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for staying a bit longer for this panel. It was a fascinating discussion. Clearly, it's an inflection point, what's happening right now in global trade. It's definitely a point of perhaps identity crises for countries, but also a moment of growth. Thank you again.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to this panel session hosted by Kaz Energy Association as a part of the Astana International Forum 2025. At the beginning, I'd like just to give you some introductory notes. You know that we are now at a pivotal juncture in the global energy landscape. And the sector is undergoing rapid and profound transformation, shaped by growing demand from one side and urgent push for decarbonization and a shifting geopolitical landscape. This transition is particularly evident in emerging markets, where energy needs are rising alongside industrial growth, urbanization, and population increases. In this environment, energy security is no longer solely about the uninterrupted flow of energy. It now requires balancing a delicate equation of reliability, affordability, and environmental responsibility. The stakes are higher. Governments and companies are being called upon to act faster and more decisively while navigating a complex web of risks, which is supply chain disruptions, volatile markets, rising capital costs, and increasing physical and cyber threats to infrastructure. Yes, this moment is also full of opportunity, of course, and like a digital innovation and distributed energy technologies and regional cooperation. All these things are opening as a new path to resilience. The challenge is not whether to act, but how to act. It's wisely, it's making decisions that support long-term security while accelerating the energy transition. This is precisely the focus of today's discussion. We're honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of leaders from government, international institutions, and the private sector, all of whom bring valuable insights of what it takes to ensure energy security in a complex and rapidly evolving world. And now let me introduce, and of course for me it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers. We start from Mr. Alibek Jamaov. He's a Vice Minister of Energy of the Republic of Kazakhstan. We welcome Mr. Peter Larden, Senior Vice President of ExxonMobil Corporation. Mr. Ashat Hasenov, Chairman of the Management Board of Kazmunagas. Our old friends and partner, Mr. Matthew Segers. He is the Vice President of S&P Global. Mr. Gurbuz Gonul, Director of Country Engagement and Partnership of International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. And Mr. Dario Leguti, Director of Sustainable Energy Division of United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And let me start now. I'm honored to start and giving the floor to Mr. Alibek Jamaov. But before that, I'd like to make some deliver the initial thoughts. And at the heart of today's theme, you know that it's a balancing transition and stability, which lies one key enabler is investment. And I'd like to start the first question from Mr. Jamaov. And Mr. Jamaov, with that in mind, I mean, so talking about the balance, energy, so challenges, geopolitical, technological challenges, I'd like to ask you, what measures is Kazakhstan taking to attract investment and manage risks related to long-term project timeline in Kazakhstan's energy sector? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Akchulakov. Good evening, dear participants of the panel session. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy, I'm pleased to welcome you today. The topic of the energy security takes on the central role of the global agenda, where the world community faces major challenges, maintaining the stable economic growth, technological development, stability of energy supplies, and decarbonization of the industry. The Kazakhstan, the oil and gas sector is one of the main drivers of the sustainable economic development, accounting for about a quarter of the country's GDP. To increase the volume of the foreign investment in the energy sector, the ministry is actively working to improve the regulatory framework and implement infrastructure projects in 2024, 16 projects worth more than 4 billion tenge. The government has introduced the improved model contract, which provides the significant packages of regulatory and fiscal preferences for geological exploration and further development of depleting fields. The mechanism will additionally attract up to 200 billion tenge annually and increase oil production at mature fields to 60 million tons by 2045. Kazakhstan is one of the largest oil producers in the world due to the favorable investment climate, including long-term contracts, attractive tax regimes, and legal frameworks have attracted major transnational corporations and to enter the market to participate in large projects such as Tengiz, Kashagan, and Karachaganak. Overall oil production volume for 2024 amounted 47.7 million tons. By 2030, we plan to increase the oil production over 100 million tons per year. For this, the government is taking necessary measures to develop new fields and diversify transportation routes. In this regard, the CPC pipeline is the most efficient route for exporting Kazakh oil. By the end of the 2024, 55 million tons of Kazakh oil were transported via CPC pipeline, and 57 millions is planned for next year. We are considering the development of the oil and gas infrastructure and diversification of transport routes. For instance, we have reached agreement with Azerbaijan side on the transportation of Kazakh oil via Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan route, the amount of 1.5 million tons per year, with a possible further increase to 2.2 million tenge per year. Kazakhstan is also working on diversify the oil transportation routes by the following directions: Trans-Caspian International Transport Route in the middle corridor, Atrau-Samara pipeline through Druzhba to direction of the Schwedt oil refinery in Germany. One of the priorities for the development of the country's oil and gas industry is the petrochemical industry. Currently, the number of large-scale projects are being implemented in Kazakhstan. In 2022, the petrochemical plants for the production of the polypropylene with a capacity of 5,000 tons per year was launched. Also, the project for the production of polyethylene with a capacity of 1.2 million tons per year is being implemented, which is the stage of the early construction works is planned for the launch in 2029. Given the global trends towards achieving carbon neutrality, it remains important today to develop both traditional and alternative and renewable energy in accordance with the regional, national conditions, industrial policy, and the social economic factors. Given the need to maintain the energy security, reliable energy supply, as well as the annual growth in electricity consumption by 2035, we plan to implement projects to modernize existing and introduce new capacities of about 26 gigawatt, including 25% of renewable energy sources. We pay attention to the development of the renewable energy sector. As a part of the Paris Agreement, Kazakhstan has set ambitious goal to achieve net zero by 2060. In this regards, we plan to increase the share of renewable energy sources by national energy balance by 2030 and 15%, and by 2050 by 50%. In accordance to achieve the set goal by 2050, the Ministry will ensure holding the annual auctions as well as implementation of the large-scale projects with strategic investors. Nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is gaining importance as a reliable green energy source capable to ensure the stable power supply. Kazakhstan has joined international declaration on tripling the use of nuclear energy by 2050 at COP29. Our country has all necessary conditions for development in nuclear energy, ranking the first in the world in terms of the volume of the uranium mining. Following the result of the Republic referendum on October 6, 2024, a positive decision was made on the construction of the nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan. This result emphasized the importance of the relevance in nuclear energy in Kazakhstan for ensuring energy security. In addition, by decree of the President of Republic of Kazakhstan, the Agency of Republic of Kazakhstan on Atomic Energy was established, aimed at implementing the task set by head of state in the nuclear industry. At the 28th Conference on the Parties, the head of the state, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, announced the accession of the Republic of Kazakhstan to the Global Methane Pledge. This confirms our country's commitment to the course of the consistent energy transition and gradual decarbonization of the economy. The ban on the gas flaring established by law on subsoil and subsoil use demonstrate the reduction of gas flaring by more than 20%. In 2006, 3.1 billion cubic meter of gas was flared, while the producing was 27 billion. By the end of the 2024, the volume of the gas flared was only 300 million, while producing 59 billion. This approach not only reduces methane emissions, but also allows us for more efficient use of valuable energy resources. Another important initiative in the creation of the Just Energy Transition Platform of Kazakhstan, our President announced an initiative at the 27th session of the UN General Assembly. The goal of the platform is to attract climate finance and investment to support the socially inclusive transition to a low-carbon economy. We are currently developing the institutional structure, governance model, and investment of the platform. More than 45 stakeholders are involved in this process, including ministries, financial institutions, academia, and international partners. Dear colleagues, Kazakhstan remains committed to continue maintaining a favorable investment climate in the energy sector, which continues to attract sustainable foreign capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhamalov, and for your very valuable and thoughtful remarks. And almost everyone in this room we know about how it's quite challenging when you are from first part is to be landlocked. And at the beginning you mentioned about our ability to securely and sustainably deliver our energy source to the global markets. And that is also You mentioned about all our coming future energy policy and how we should implement so many projects like in petrochemistry, and also you touched this nuclear power station project, which is one of the key, going to be one of the key for the energy sustainable policy in Kazakhstan. And thank you. I think it's a tone of this dispute is given now, and we will just follow and look it's from the other angles of views around the globe. And now I'd like to turn to ExxonMobil Corporation. And for me, and not only for me, but for all Kazakhstan, it's one of the key global partner. And for the last more than 3 decades, and hopefully in last 30 years, I'm working in this industry. All these 30 years, I am working jointly with companies like ExxonMobil. Even before it was just a Mobil, I know, but now it's ExxonMobil. It's a more huge company, and it's one of the key partner. And you are our strategic partner in Tengiz fields and Karachaganak. It's a huge, giant fields in the world scale. And also, I know that ExxonMobil remains as a company which is in the heart of discussions on how to meet rising energy demand and while advancing low carbon solution. And from that perspective, I'd like to raise a question, Mr. Lardan. As we look forward ahead to 2050, what does ExxonMobil envision the global energy landscape, and what role do you see for Kazakhstan in this future? Please.
Well, thank you for the question, and I'll start by saying it's an absolute pleasure to be part of this forum and certainly part of the panel here today with such esteemed colleagues. ExxonMobil has proudly operated in Kazakhstan, as you've said, for 30 years, and we have a long and proud history across the world as well. And as we look forward, certainly for the next half a century out through 2050, we see the world quite differently than it is today. We anticipate that the global population will rise to about 10 billion people, and coupled with the improved standards of living that we expect across the world as well, particularly in developing countries, we'd anticipate that about a 15% increase in energy demand is required or will be required to meet society's needs. And while renewables will grow rapidly through that period to support the increased demand, oil and gas will continue to play a really important role. And by 2050, we estimate around about 50% of the world's energy mix will be oil and gas, which is really important for a country like Kazakhstan. Of course, oil and gas is still going to be critical to industrial processes, to manufacturing, to heavy transportation industries. And when we think about oil specifically, we would expect that across that same time frame, oil will plateau around about 100 million barrels a day, despite the fact that renewable energy sources and lower carbon energy sources will start to grow. And for Kazakhstan in particular, with a really strategic location in between Europe and Asia being much of the anticipated growth, there's a real opportunity here for Kazakhstan to play a major role, of course. Our experience has been, as the Vice Minister said, it's not just about having world-class resources, you also have to have a really attractive and a really well-understood investment climate. And I think that is the key as we think forward here about the global energy demand and the role that each country can play in that regard. And our experience says that when you have an attractive investment climate, which is underpinned by sound fiscals, regulatory certainty, and a robust legal framework, they are the key ingredients to attract the type of investments and the type of decisions from foreign investors that underpin multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar investments. So for us, that's what we're looking for as we scan the global landscape to support global energy growth, and I appreciate your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Larden, and we hope that not just as a history for the last 3 decades, and we're looking forward. That's why we mentioned about 2050, which is, it looks like quite long, but we know that time is ticking so faster, and it's just tomorrow. And all key decisions on investment should be executed, at least a decision should be executed today. And in Kazakhstan, there are a lot of opportunities, like Mr. Jamaov mentioned before, from resources point of view. And Kazakhstan, from this point of view, is still rich of all resources, including hydrocarbons as well. And, but you know that we're challenging and experiencing the challenge of low carbon, green, but we're talking about balancing transition and stability. So stability means we need to find the proper balance. And from that point of view, I hope that next era of, how we say, next step in hydrocarbon market development in Kazakhstan, it's still in the coming future. And we hope that ExxonMobil, as our key and strategic partner, will continuously be presented here in Kazakhstan. And I hope we will execute a number of the projects in the future by joint effort. Thank you again. And now I would like to turn to someone who represents a national perspective on energy security. I know Mr. Khasenov, and he's now Chief Executive Officer of Kazmunagas National Oil and Gas Company. Before, he was Vice Minister of Energy as well, was dealing with a number of projects in oil and gas. And he was also been working in Kizlorda region as engineer. He knows very well. But KMG is one of the unique company, which is a national oil and gas company, and should make some inputs into the policy of energy in Kazakhstan. But from another side, he also one is who should execute as well. This everything he said as a policy key issues. And now, so that is an interesting situation for him. And we mentioned about this balancing transition and all challenges, you know, even the better than me. And that's why I'd like just to raise a question for you about this, regarding this. The question is, could you share with us how Kazmunagas is setting its long-term strategy in the context of energy transition? What priorities have been identified to achieve a balance between traditional production and the development of low-carbon projects?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Walter Rauch. As you mentioned, KMG has a two-hat. I always mentioned about this point for my partners, for our partners. One hat is a company, as a company. The second is as a government representative. And of course, for us, today I think we see, and we're glad to see here our partners from ENI, from Shell, from Exxon, and another our major forged partners. For us, I think some common view is a lot today is when we are talking about balancing between this transition and stability is a very hard very hard question. We have a lot of challenges, and as a KMG, as a national oil company, oil and gas company, of course, we have our strategy. Today our focus is first is geological exploration. Mr. Jamalov mentioned government helps, reforms, it's called improved model contract, and we are proud that a lot of companies with us use this improved model contract and implement new geological projects. This is our focus, and KMG today is implementing actually the numbers, a lot of numbers, geological projects, and we are proud on this. And the government, thanks for Ministry of Energy for realizing these laws change in subsoil codex. The second priority is, of course, for us is petrochemical. Petrochemical is today, you know very well, all of you, that we are today realizing the big projects in the industry, polyethylene. We will discussing on carbamide, we will discussing on polyethylene terephthalate, and all of these projects for us, of course, very important. And for realizing this very ambitious to direct, which is very riskful anyway, for us very important to support from current oil production, yes, from this our current oil production with our partners. It's very important to support and to evolve, to develop these two direct, as I mentioned, geological and our focus and petrochemical. So again, it's only one way. I believe it's find a balance between sustainable oil production today and with this ecology agenda. And for us as a KMG, of course, we will continue our strong, to achieve our strong view, to increase our reserves, of course, and realize petrochemical industry to help our economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite clear about your program, and we wish you success in executing all initiatives you mentioned here, yes, which is not easy, of course.
Mr. Akchulakov, can I put some
Thank you.
comments?
Yes,
Basically,
yes.
Mr. Khasentov is a very kind person. Basically, he developed that changes in the subsoil codex.
I think the success in the execution, all the ideas you mentioned, both of you, that is for the benefit of the country. I think it's regardless who will raise these questions, but it's a more mixed matter who will successfully execute that. And what I heard today, and which is good for me, I mean, and for all representatives of oil and gas sector, that we are still thinking and trying to execute a number of the projects in geological survey and exploration, which is we need to refresh our resources, even we are in transition period. But it's always, and we're talking about that always is better to have something in your pocket instead of just to think about this deep nights. So this is a really good message. Thank you. Next, I'd like to turn to Mr. Seges. Here is written that, okay, Mr. Seges from S&P Global, but we know each other almost, I forgot how many years. And Mr. Seges, we started working jointly on energy reports for Kazakhstan many years ago. That time it was IHS company. And I'd like to present Mr. Seges like he's someone who sometimes knows even better about all the things in your house, better than the owner. So because we went through the number of the energy reports, and you've been deeply dive into the policy, all statistics, projects, futures. And that's why I think your thoughts is going to be really important and valuable for all of us. And it looks like I'm asking about my destiny from my guest. Yeah, so, but he's no guest anymore. He's a member of the family of energy people here in Kazakhstan. That's why my question, Mr. Seges, to you. In your view, how do domestic energy prices in Kazakhstan affect the investment appeal of its oil and gas sector? I know that is not an easy question, but that's the question we may ask not from someone who is not living here. Yeah, so particularly amid a broader global investment slowdown. How crucial is government pricing policies striking the right balance between affordability and long-term energy security? Thank you.
I thought we agreed I wasn't going to get any hard questions. But
before that, a week ago, I was sitting just opposite. He was asking me about the question. Now it's my turn. Yeah, to raise the
anyway,
question.
I do want to say that I am a guest here. I want to thank Kazakhstan hospitality greatly. I am feeling very much like an honored guest today, and so thank you very much. It's always an honor to be here, but today in particular, it's been absolutely great. Some of the thoughts that I have been shared before with everybody, but let me just start with the question of investment. Globally speaking, investment is really what drives economic development. We all know that. So the result is we spend a lot of time thinking about it, mobilizing it, attracting it, and accumulating it, because ultimately what is, raise the lives of our citizens. That's kind of why we do it. And so when I look at investment in Kazakhstan, I see two trends. One seems very worrying, and the other one seems very positive, and I don't know which one will win out. On the worrying side, upstream investment in fixed capital has dropped from a peak of $12.8 billion in 2019 to $4.8 billion last year. I can almost hear the air going out of the room. The share of upstream investment has dropped from about 49% in Kazakhstan to about 29%. That would be very worrying. Is the era of big oil over in Kazakhstan or not? Can Kazakhstan attract new upstream investments to basically lift this again? This is kind of the question that we've been looking at here overall. But on the same side, always with these things, there's two sides of the same coin. As we look at the other side of the coin, we see a couple of encouraging signs. One is that investment in electric power, which we'll get to a little bit later on, has bounced and risen a little bit. It's now running at about $2.1, $2.2 billion a year, which is not bad, but at the same time, I think most of us would say that's kind of too little for the size of the thing, but nonetheless, it's gone up. And the other thing is that when you look at what's happened to overall investment in the economy, it's been rising overall. Total fixed capital investment last year was $41 billion. It's been clipping along since the pandemic at almost double digits when you measure it in tenge. And so the question is, has Kazakhstan matured? Is Kazakhstan making a change from resource extraction to deeper processing? I think that, almost everyone that I heard up here was talking about value chains, petrochemicals, diversification. So like I said, there's two trends here. And clearly, when you think about oil and the upstream side, that's basically driven by what's happening in the international market, oil market. But when we come back to some of these other sectors that really affect the population, like for example, here in Kazakhstan, it's pricing inside the country for electric power, for gas and so forth. And this is also what really hits the level of the population. And so you do need to basically raise prices to generate the capital, to accumulate the capital, to basically lift citizens, but at the same time, you've got to be careful to not go beyond what their affordability is. So it's a very difficult line to walk, difficult line to do, but that's what you're called to do as leaders. This is what it's all about. No one said this would be easy. Look at my first line. Accumulating, attracting, building. It all sounds very easy, but it's actually pretty hard overall. So I don't want to be too negative, but again, it's something that Kazakhstan, I think, has managed very well for the past 30 years, and I'm expecting Kazakhstan to do pretty well for the next 20. There's a lot of excellent population, education, intellectual capital here that can be drawn upon. This is not Kazakhstan of 30 years ago. It's moved on, and again, I congratulate everyone here for what has happened, the transformation of this country over the past 30 years.
Thank you, Mr. Segas. And it seems like we have a future. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. because
I'll be honest with you. There's a couple of neighbors in the area that they wish they had your future.
thanks, thank you. Because we're talking about transition, and for me it's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Gonul. You know that Central Asia is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels, but it holds enormous untapped potential for renewables. And if I'm not wrong, by one of the latest research done by United Nations departments, only in wind power, the future or our opportunity and source can almost equal to 2 trillion kilowatts hour of renewable energy only from the wind. That is a potential source of Kazakhstan. And IRENA's initiatives in the region are becoming increasingly visible now. And you know that Kazakhstan following and executing our obligation under Paris Agreement, and you know that our initial obligation was 3%, now we are almost 6%, we're exceeding, and we would like to reach 15% of renewables in our energy balance by 2030. But anyway, may I ask you the question, what role do you think APRECA initiative plays in promoting the energy transition in Central Asia, taking into account all existing and given facts?
Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to be part of this forum, and many thanks to the Ministry as well as KazEnerji for having IRENA both in the forum but also in this specific session. In fact, IRENA has been very present in the region since the early days of IRENA. IRENA is it's a relatively young organization, but since the early days we have been present in the region supporting the ambitions with technical assistance capacity building. But now this ambition is rising in the region in terms of renewables and energy transition. And we thought that there's a need for stronger cooperation framework with the countries, with the region, and that's how we have came up with this new initiative, APRECA, which stands for Accelerated Partnership for Renewables in Central Asia. In fact, with this partnership, what we are trying to do, 3 things. One is how we can accelerate deployment of renewables, obviously. And the second part is how we can promote interconnectivity, which will lead to stronger renewable-based electricity trade within the region, but outside of the region also. And the third component is renewables and energy transition always linked to development. That's why how we can maximize socioeconomic benefits coming from energy transition to the region, with the energy transition accelerated in the region. I would like to highlight 4 dimensions of APRECA. One is infrastructure. Because at IRENA, we believe that main stumbling block for accelerated energy transition based on renewables is the lack of infrastructure. And the grids comes first. And we see this challenge also in the region. We see ambitions are rising. Uzbekistan, there's a solar boom in Uzbekistan with already 11 solar plants online, and they have ambition to achieve more than 50% by 2030. We have heard Kazakhstan, I think they have also ambitious plans, but is the grid keeping up with that? I mean, there has been a strong deployment in Uzbekistan, for instance. Are there enough capacity in the grid, or is grids are ready to accommodate those, especially intermittent power, and still operate securely? It needs, in many countries, expansion, modernization, digitalization, and that is how we have identified the first activity to work with the countries of the region and how we can do a better planning and still having large sums of renewables coming in online, but also grids and infrastructure operates securely. This is the first dimension that I want to highlight. The second dimension is, obviously, we need to have necessary regulatory and policy frameworks. Strong policies, not complicated, easily implementable, but which will also create a conducive environment for investments, not only renewables, but energy efficiency, but also for the development of critical minerals, also for development of green hydrogen that I'm going to mention. So it's a kind of a broader framework of policies and market design required in order to accelerate it. Third dimension is definitely how we can create local value, how we can stimulate economic activities and green industrialization around energy transition. I mean, there is a lot of talk about the supply chains when we talk about renewables and energy transition and the risk associated with it. Obviously, it is about how we can create the right manufacturing capacities, but also how we can make available access to critical minerals. When we talk about critical minerals, the region is rich. And they have, I have a list of it, I mean, a long list of minerals available in the region. Many of them available in Kazakhstan, but it requires infrastructure investments. It requires, especially on the transportation side and also on processing side, it requires investment. There is an opportunity for green hydrogen. The countries can produce cheap renewables, renewables at a very low cost, which is an important ingredient of lowering the cost of green hydrogen. And the countries can become really an important hub for green hydrogen. We have recently done a study, especially how green hydrogen can be integrated into industry decarbonization in Central Asia and Caucasus. We have looked into several dimensions of it. Obviously, there are certain challenges, like electricity tariffs, I think it was mentioned, aging infrastructure, etc. But I think the countries are starting to develop their own national plans. Maybe some pilot projects may come up. That discussion is already started and can take the region forward in green hydrogen development. And the last point is, obviously, everything comes or boils down to the fact that whether investments are taking place or not. So how we can stimulate investments, how we can bring private sector, especially certain countries in the region, in Central Asia, more strongly into the renewable energy sector, how we can facilitate access to affordable finance. And IRENA is not an implementing organization. We don't provide funding for investment, but our role is more how we can develop strong pipeline of projects and pitch them to financial institutions. We have a platform, accelerated energy transition accelerated financing platform, where we brought together 14 financial institutions, multilaterals, bilaterals, providing different products, equity support, loans, insurance, etc. And they have already committed more than $4 billion to finance projects globally, including in Central Asia. We have already facilitated a 900 megawatt project in Uzbekistan, and we are very much looking forward to expanding the support to additional projects in the region.
Thank you, Mr. Gonul, for this good, and you highlighted the importance of regional cooperation and about existing situation in renewable energy in Kazakhstan. And I'd like to inform that just yesterday it was another auction for renewables in Kazakhstan. And the price for 1 kilowatt hour, the winner takes it 11.5 tenge, which is significantly less if we will compare at the beginning of this way. I do remember it was really, really expensive before. But now it's getting more and more cheaper. I think it's one of the reasons of that is the technology. And we're also expecting another question we raised before at the beginning. Is if renewables may provide for the countries like Kazakhstan heating power as well. So that is still open question, and we hope that in coming future technology will reach this level. But I'd like to raise another question. We talk about the regional, and now I'd like to raise a forward-looking question tied to the global ambitions. And in United Arab Emirates consensus at COP28 marked a historical commitment to tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency by 2030. How can Central Asia countries set and fulfill more ambitious NDCs in line with that vision and IRENA's 1.5 degree scenario?
Thank you. Let me start with what you have said about the declining costs, because as you rightly said, Central Asia has vast resources, potential for renewables, and cost is not an issue anymore. And the numbers speak for themselves. Last year, we have seen 585 gigawatt of renewables deployed, and this constitutes 93% of electricity installed globally in 1 year. From 86% previous year, and this year 93%. And when we look at the costs, 80% of renewables installed, they are cheaper than fossil fuel alternatives. When we look at the solar, on average, they are half price of fossil fuel alternatives. So the costs are really significantly declined, and the deployment is much faster. And the deployment is much faster because not only because of the convenient investment environment, but because of the practicality that renewable energy investments, they take place much faster than alternative options. It's a matter of months to install a solar or wind power plant, compared to 5 to 20 years easily between fossil fuel or nuclear options. So it's a kind of speed matters, especially if you are serious about the climate goals, speed matters. This year is an opportunity to raise ambition. Especially you have mentioned the climate goals. In that context, this year, countries are expected to provide their updated NDCs until COP30, which will take place in Brazil towards the end of the year. And this year, we are working with a number of countries, including Kyrgyzstan in the region, and how we can help them to raise their ambition in their NDCs, and then which can be translated into also stronger action in the country itself. There are sometimes mismatches between what they set as goals at the national level versus at the international level. We are also trying to align them. But also we are trying to on how this can be achieved in a more stronger way. For instance, in Kyrgyzstan, we are kind of trying to work with them to create some incentive mechanisms to how to bring more strongly private sector into renewable energy investments. Obviously, the important part is when we set those ambitions and then how we can have a strong planning framework in the country and reliable and easily updatable. And we have developed this new coalition, global coalition for energy planning, to help countries to move from planning or translate those strong, robust planning framework into investments and finance framework. And we have developed that partnership with Brazil, and hopefully we're looking forward to having other countries also on board with this initiative.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gunul. And just assuming all the thoughts you delivered today, I hope that we have a very prosperous future, not only in oil and gas, and also in renewables. Regionally, globally, and all these good trends. And Kazakhstan will also be the part of this trends on renewables as well, on proper balancing case. Thank you. And now let me turn to the multilateral perspective. Now we have Mr. Leguti with us, and we know that Mr. Leguti, your work at the United Nations Economic Commissions for Europe places you at the forefront of regional energy cooperation, standardization, and system-wide approaches. Based on recent UNSC research, what strategies do you see as the most effective today in strengthening energy security, particularly in balancing reliability, affordability, and environmental sustainability? What practical tools and mechanisms, including digitalization, resource management, and regional integration, would you recommend to help countries implement such a strategy? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And it's great to be back at the Astana International Forum. And I think the previous speakers mentioned some of the ingredients of what will be an answer to your question. Certainly, I think there are a number of countries with the crisis that happened all over the world, a number of countries thought that energy security means energy independence, energy autonomy. Well, we don't believe in that, and that for a number of reasons. We are supporting the fact that energy interdependence and whether it's connectivity, electric, we already talked about the role of the grids, but as well trading energy, whether it's molecules or fuels or electrons, is something that enhances all countries' energy resilience. And this is, I think, I want to give a slightly different perspective about the issue between, the trilemma in the energy space, one between affordability, reliability, and sustainability. And it's actually the concept of energy resiliency. I mean, in our view, the three components are part of what is a resilient energy system needs to be. We have seen that across the world, not just in emerging markets, but you've seen what happened recently as well in Western Europe. All of these three issues need to be looked at very closely. And by looking at that and the trade-off that you have between these three issues, this is how you build a resilient energy system. Resilient energy systems, coming back to your question, it is enhanced by energy collaboration, energy cooperation between countries, between neighboring countries. That's easy, but as well further up. And so therefore, we're working as well on supporting Central Asia to become again, or actually to become a real energy market, a regional energy market, open to the other markets. Central Asia is in between Europe and Asia, and has in the South Asia, which is a huge market. And therefore has plenty of opportunities of becoming a powerhouse, particularly Kazakhstan within Central Asia, to become an energy powerhouse for the rest of the neighboring countries around that. So energy connectivity is one of the elements. The second one, which we should not forget, is about energy efficiency, in particular energy intensity. This region remains one of the most energy intense across the world. Number of countries here are only slightly less energy intensive than Middle Eastern countries, oil producing in Middle Eastern countries. And this is an energy, if you want a more secure energy, this is as well the energy that you don't consume. And therefore, if you need less energy, you become as well automatically more secure in your energy profile. And therefore, that's a second aspect. You mentioned digitalization. This plays a great role, particularly in stabilizing grids, in updating these grids, as Bull mentioned before, but not only, having a diversified mix of energy sources. I wish to reassure Matthew and as well our Kazakh friends that Kazakhstan has not only a great future in oil and gas, but in renewable energy too. And actually, the future of Kazakhstan is in a mix of energy sources, after as well the choice that they have made of embracing nuclear energy. And therefore, having a diversified portfolio of energy sources is another aspect that enhances energy security, affordability, and reliability at the same time, particularly as we are facing climate change. Let's not forget that climate change is fundamentally an uncertainty, an uncertain variable. We don't know how it really will evolve over the years. We don't know what will be the impact on our infrastructure, on our power generation capacity 10 to 15 years down the road. When we do an investment in a power infrastructure, we're looking at nuclear energy 50 to 70 years. We're looking at renewable energy or fossil fuels. We're looking at at least 50 years investment profile. Looking at that. Certainly, we need to keep that in mind, and not knowing, being able to know what's going to happen 50 years down the road. Well, you need to prepare with options. And the options is a diversified mix of energy sources where you can manage those risks in a certain way. Digitalization we already mentioned, and I think you mentioned a very, very, very important point, particularly for Kazakhstan and for Central Asia, which Gurbul mentioned before, is the critical raw minerals and the role that these critical raw minerals play in the energy transition. The energy transition requires an incredible amount of critical raw minerals with today's technology. Those technologies will evolve, and those needs will change over time. We have seen already in batteries, for example, new technologies are coming up, costs are coming down, etc. That will continue to happen. But here, particularly in Kazakhstan as well, there is a huge opportunity to look at the role of critical raw minerals in supporting that and having uranium, as was mentioned, and that is the reason as well why nuclear energy has been chosen in this country. But the other critical raw minerals not only gives an opportunity to create value chains, and that is a third aspect around your energy resiliency, is having, trading, but you have as well pieces of those value chains in the energy production of the different type of energies here in this country and in the region overall. And so that is another aspect that I think it's very relevant when it comes to our discussions around here. And I have to commend and I have to highlight the fact that the government of Kazakhstan, as well as the other governments around Central Asia, are starting to seize these opportunities, are starting to see these opportunities. We heard about the ambitions in renewable energy. We're starting from a low base here. We have a neighbor who was much more advanced on that space and has shown it is possible, how is it done with the support of the private sector, and how all of the issues that we raised before, how can be worked out to the benefit of the country. So therefore, it is great that we're actually moving into that direction. I think speed is a very important point, of course, to seize those opportunities as they're real now. And therefore, I think, I very much hope so. And to close my intervention, I think it's been mentioned, the regional cooperation is crucial in this region, but with the region, with outside, the other neighboring regions, if you want. And certainly here, a role of the countries to go together, to become more cooperative, to create those opportunities, and to attract the foreign direct investment at scale as it's needed. Regional cooperation is a fundamental element. So these are the four aspects that I would say are conducive to a more, let's say, as you mentioned from the very beginning, to a more a speedier transition and a just transition for this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leguti. It's really I think it's for all of us. You mentioned about science is a systematically oriented program, which is really logical, what you mentioned. And I think we will take into account all the thoughts, because now Kazakhstan is working deeply on the transition period policy. And you're absolutely right. And for the countries like Kazakhstan, it's quite unique when a country starts in Europe and lays till the deeply Asia by bordering with China, which is quite huge territory. And even some part of Kazakhstan, that in Europe. It's western part of Kazakhstan in Europe. And I think it's really important for us. And from another side, it's in Kazakhstan, I mentioned before when we're talking with Mr. Gunul, and that, for example, in the region like Astana here, we are experiencing 6 months of winter. And that's also another challenge, not only for renewables, but for the living condition. That's why I mentioned about the heating power. And unfortunately, we cannot get enough and sustainable heating power from renewables still, but I do believe that technology will develop and reach this level when we will start enjoying these new technologies, giving us heating power from renewables. And thank you again. And of course, we are very close to the end of the session, and I'd like to raise a couple of questions, if I may. The first question I'd like to ask Mr. Hasyanov now, and and sorry, but this question is like a question of faith. And the question is easy. It's from your perspective, because you're at the heart of the industry and the national company, and as a national company, you are really deeply down in oil and gas industry. Do you believe hydrocarbons will continue to play a central role in shaping a sustainable energy balance for our country?
Well, my strong answer is yes. I do believe.
Thank you. You saved you answered even maximum shorter than even my question.
Yes.
It's okay, thank you.
Actually,
It's nice. No, it's okay.
okay.
It means that you know your business very well. Yeah. Thank you. And before we conclude, I'd like also to raise a last but not least question to Mr. Larden as well. How is ExxonMobil managing the needs for increased energy while also focusing on cutting carbon emissions?
It's a great question. I don't know that I can do that in one word, but I will try to be brief, given I know that we're at the end of the session here. I think President Tokayev laid it out importantly this morning in that growing our supply of energy to meet energy demand while still reducing carbon emissions is a critical problem for the industry to solve. And particularly here in Central Asia, the need for carbon reduction is critically important, as he mentioned this morning. For ExxonMobil, we call that the AND equation, which is meeting society's energy needs while reducing emissions. And for us as a company, looking out through 2050 again, our ambition is to remove or get to net zero in our Scope 1 and Scope 2 operated emissions by that time. It's going to take a range of solutions to get there, but we're investing heavily in areas that we're strategically advantaged in and that have high impact. So carbon capture and storage or low carbon hydrogen being two prominent ones. As we look out over even just the next 5 years, we've got up to $30 billion worth of investment opportunity in that space in particular. But as I said, it is going to take a whole range of solutions to get there. We think for us in particular, we have an advantage in that we have a global scale, we've got access to leading technology, we're collaborating with governments, with industry leaders, with universities to ensure that we have access to the highest impact projects. And while this is the right thing to do environmentally, we hope that it also makes good business sense, and we're targeting returns of about 15% on that $30 billion portfolio. But we're also realistic that the space is continuing to evolve. The policies are still uncertain. Customer demand is still evolving and uncertain. So we're being very thoughtful about how we consider where and when to invest so that we pace the investments in line with the evolving policy and customer demand. When I think about Kazakhstan in particular, the Vice Minister mentioned it earlier, a really ambitious plan to get to net zero by 2060, and we commend the Republic on setting that goal. I think the key underlying factor, as I mentioned earlier, for ongoing oil and gas investment, again, is to set the right policy, transparent, productive, and well understood robust policy so that the industry can make the right investment decisions, which again can be multi-billion dollars over an extended time frame. So I'll leave the response there, hopefully give you a minute or two back, but thank you for the question.
I'd like to thank all of participants today and our distinguished speakers and all people here, participants for this session. And yeah, as a moderator, and that's why we need to close because the time is, thank you. It's almost 5. Yes, but before we close this session, I'd like to deliver a couple of the messages because the key topic of the Astana International Forum is middle power. And we know that Kazakhstan is, we are identifying ourselves as a middle power here in the region. And because we are just, as I mentioned before, we're between Europe and Asia first. And we place to serve as a bridge between developed and developing markets as well. So that is our location, I mean, geographically. And also we are between traditional energy and renewable innovations. So that's also here. And I think it's this role for Kazakhstan carries both responsibility and opportunity. And today's session has shown that Kazakhstan is embracing both. And I believe that is not a still clear answer and good scenario globally, not only in Kazakhstan, what the transition is still. And we should take into account the location, climate change as well, which is a 1.5 degree scenario, and culture, and infrastructure we mentioned here, and all our investments which already done into the oil and gas, which we need to cover. And that's number of the and geopolitical issues, and that's we should take into account. And I hope and I believe that today we just underlined and we shared with our thoughts about what the good and proper scenario can be. But that is just the beginning of this dialogue, and that's why I wish health and prosperity to all of you, and I hope God bless us by the health to see the result of this dialogue one day, and to be the witness of this. And thank you again for participating, and wish you all the best. Thank you.